Welcome. This is the Drupal Usability meeting for April 11th, 2025. I'm Benjy Fisher moderating, and Ralph Kohler is here sharing their screen, and we'll start off the discussion. Go ahead.
Thanks, Benji. I guess, yeah, and hi, Simo. I guess we agreed on taking a look at issue number 29338, a five-digit issue from 2005 starting. It's hide promoted sticky fields by default in form display. Basically, easiest is probably we simply take a look at an site that has the patch not applied and another site with the patch applied, and that way it's easier to compare. So question basically is, at the moment, if you go to a content type and let's create a new one, let's call it new, and at the moment you have basically the default options with published, promoted to front page, sticky, unticked, sticky at top of the list unticked, and create new revisions ticked. Users with sufficient access rights will be able to override these options. We go to Save Manage Fields, and if you go to Manage Form Display, yeah, the promoted to front page sticky at top of lists are available there and enabled. Now, let's take a look at a site with a patch applied. New, and if you go in here, as you can see here, it was basically bit in the description added. User with sufficient access rights will be able to override these options. The promoted to front page in sticky at top of lists fields are hidden by default. They can be enabled on the manage form display page. Now save, manage form display, and as you can see here, they're disabled at the bottom. So that's basically the patch. And the question or the worry on the issue is mainly about the description. If it's too complicated or unclear, and they ask for feedback mainly in that context, but yeah, in general about the functionality, I guess, as well. Any questions?
Yeah, so let's give a little background. I think as it's discussed on the issue, these fields have been around for a very long time, and they're basically useful for using Drupal as a blog, that you have blog posts and you promote some of them to the front page. You have various lists and you want things to rise to the top. And perhaps some of the default views in Drupal still respect those two flags, but they're just Booleans, and you can use them or not in any view you create. And Drupal isn't used as a blog platform that frequently. They're sort of archaic. I think most people don't use them anymore, but they're there by default. Simo, anything you want to say about the issue?
Mm, Not really. I think one of the kind of some of the uses for sticky is not using that sticky uh, concept, but just using it as a checkbox or something else. Also, so kind of the stickiness is not really something that comes up often. Promoted to front page is something that I assume is used more, but yeah, I often keep wondering why those are still around.
Okay, so I guess this issue is about making them less prominent. if not actually removing them. Um, and any first opinions on whether we need the text at all, whether we need to say more, whether we like the text that's added in the patch? Go ahead, Ralph.
I would have a general, probably technical question and something that is on second thought quite puzzling, to be honest. I mean, if let's create a new one again. Call it another. If you have a basically a new content type, and now here you have the default options. Publish is checked, promote to front page is checked, sticky is unchecked, and create new revision is checked. So it's for one, it's a good thing to point to basically the manage form display page that I consider helpful in the context of basically that you are able to then adjust those widgets. But my problem is another, if you take the promote to front page is checked, but if you go on here now, promote to front page is disabled. So it's a sort of a disconnect, meaning if I check it on the edit page, is it then shown here at all, or is it enabled or disabled? It's a mixed messaging between those two checkboxes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think the effect is that if it's disabled on the form, then even if you have permissions, there's no way to change it. So the default value is always the value.
I think here it would make sense like a published, yeah. Uh, and here is a kind of why published isn't hidden, why create new revision is not hidden. So I think it shouldn't be connected to setting it default or not default to hide it. I think it would kind of make more sense to uh, have it like have a separate selection for which if they are enabled, and then kind of not then like here creating content
Oh.
type to have to decide if they are enabled, and then kind of refer to the form settings or the field settings somewhere. Oh, they're not as field settings. Yeah, it's not in manage fields to make them uh, default values. So I think a default value should not affect if it's shown or not. So it's kind of a
Yeah, can you look at the Manage Fields tab? We've skipped over that one.
Uh,
So these are base fields. They're not attached fields, so they don't show up here. Sort of, I think that would be the natural thing to do is to totally eliminate that little section on the Edit tab and let people manage default values, true or false, for Boolean fields. Let them manage default values on the Manage Fields tab. But we can't do that because they're base fields. That's why they show up on the edit page.
hmm.
The other thing is that you know, part of the reason that they're given special attention is that they are tied to a particular permission, the administer content types, is it? Or no, the administer content permission, um, which is something we changed in a recent security release. It used to be that even though, excuse me, even though you needed that particular permission to edit node one at a time, if you used the bulk operations, that permission was ignored.
Oh.
Um, but that's just a bit of a digression. Um, okay, so since they are base fields, we can't manage them from yeah, it's this first one, administer content. Um, so we can't edit them here, so the only way to set default values is on the edit screen. Um, my opinion is that um, pointing people to the manage form display page is just redundant. That this further confuses or mixes up the responsibility of the three different tabs. Whether or not they show up on the form is the business of the Manage Form Display tab. And the Edit tab doesn't need to talk about that at all. I would just remove the new text.
Oh, and here it says that the promoted to front page and stick at top of list fields are hidden by default. So it's kind of hidden where? Hidden from display, hidden from form. So it doesn't distinguish that. So it's kind of you could have them show up on the theme, like visually. So it's kind of are they hidden from managed display? Can they be on managed display?
They're disabled here.
On the form display, but
Yeah.
how about the kind of the
one second.
yeah, so it's not here. So
No.
it's kind of it doesn't affect whether or not you can use them on the kind of on the templates and stuff like that. So that's also something that I maybe it's just have it somewhere in the documentation that they are not displayed. But I think it's too much, like it's unnecessary if you want to get rid of them, and then it's not necessary to like explain how manage form display works.
Right. So the current help text isn't clear that it's talking about hidden from display or hidden in the form. Again, I think that the extra help text is just not useful at all and should be removed.
Yeah, it's further confusing everything.
So do either of you think that we should keep and possibly improve the help text, or do you agree that we should just remove it? I mean, I want to keep the existing text, the first sentence,
Yeah.
but I don't think we should add anything to that in this issue. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
Agreed.
kind of agree.
And it's also the more or less consensus on the issue that people thought it would be good to remove it again. If I'm not completely mistaken.
At least some people were agreeing with that. I think S. Musgrave said -1 for the description.
Does this change the default options? What are the current default options?
And default options are the same.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I wonder if that promoted to front page. I think I'm always annoyed having to check off those. So I think promoted to front page, like if you don't use it, then kind of it should be unchecked by default, especially if we are hiding those from the form.
Yeah.
So that this kind of feels like it doesn't matter.
Well, that would be scope creep. As they point out, this issue has been around for a long time, and we'd like to just get it done. And that's a separate question.
It's not really separate if there is a kind of a setting that is on, but the ability to change it is turned off by default. So it's in a way, it would make sense to me that for usability that it's off if the default value is like it's not checked by default. If by default that you can't uncheck it. So in a way.
I wonder if that's been discussed on the issue.
Mm.
Oh yeah, look at comment number 15. And one of the issues linked there is promoted to front page for new content types should default to unchecked. So there's already a separate issue for that suggestion.
Okay.
And are they?
It's reviewed and tested RTPC.
Okay, so then it's fine. Updated yesterday.
Yeah. And just one note, if that promoted to front page would be unchecked per default on a new content type, then it would be clearer also, because that was the most puzzling detail, having promoted to front page checked, the other unchecked, and then going to the manage form display and both disabled. That was the detail that puzzled me. And if those would be mirrored in air quotes and consistent, it would be less confusing on a
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, both of those issues, when they are merged, then it's kind of big improvement, I think. At least for me, for my use cases, probably a lot of others as well.
Right. Now, I was only disagreeing about scope, and I agree
Yeah.
that promoted to front page should be off by default. So, I think we're in good shape since there is already a separate issue. That's what how I wanted to handle it.
Yeah. And maybe in one future issue, it might be made clearer the difference or more apparent between default options and if something is enabled or disabled on the manage form display page. Like Simo suggested, having it in closer proximity, maybe on the same page. something like that. Because it's still a bit confusing from my perspective, or not directly clear for someone who is just clicking and using and based just on the microcopy. I'm not sure if someone is able to understand out of the box.
Ah, so I'll get back to what I said before, which is that if these weren't base fields, if they were regular attached fields, then we would manage the default values on the Manage Field tabs. And if you want to make an issue for helping people out, I would add a comment there and say that on the Manage Field tabs that these things are base fields and default values can be set on the Edit tab. If there's going to be a help message, I would put it there rather than on the Manage Form Display tab.
So basically, you mean, oops, that's the wrong one. No, that was the right one. You would add a help text in here.
No, you're still on the Manage Form Display tab, and that's never where I look for setting default values.
Ah, you mean here on, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that would make sense. And that, well, that also reminds me to the other issue we've touched in the meeting when Christina and Emma joined. That issue I've created a while ago, and we've discussed it already here in about Manage Form Display, to distinguish between base fields or the fields in the advanced sidebar and the fields that are added here. Because in here is a homogeneous list, you're unable to distinguish between what is a field and what is basically in the advanced sidebar. But Christina said with Experience Builder it would be obsolete, but I haven't seen it yet. So, but I still consider that page here a problem.
Yeah. Experience Builder isn't here yet. And right now, there's this improvement I would like to make. Um,
Yeah, but I'm not sure if Experience Builder exactly tackles that issue. So I haven't seen it yet
mhm.
or played around in that context. So, but I'm curious. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, adding a help text on managed fields might be also a reasonable step in a follow-up issue.
So it's about halfway through the hour. Shall we have a look at another issue?
Yeah, we could.
There was one you mentioned briefly
Last
last
week,
week.
yeah,
Yeah.
that one. That's issue number 3474876. Clarify, replace stage terminology in package manager.
And this is a follow-up issue to something we looked at a while ago um, in the project browser issue, right? And
I It's related, but not a follow-up issue, I suppose.
okay. But I do remember that as we were looking at that, the various error messages displayed
Yeah.
to the user in the project browser were just coming from this lower level package manager module, and they were in many cases unhelpful to the end user. Um, but
And in that issue you've mentioned, we also try to avoid composer terminology like stage.
that's right.
I'm currently searching for the issue. 1 second. Do you remember how it was roughly called?
Oh, it was talking about the Svelte UI.
Yeah.
So I think that's the term to search for.
Don't find it.
Search for closed issues. With Svelte, I bet it'll turn up. Oh, they use Svelte a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I've searched just for error messages and looked for my username as follower. That way it was an easier match. Yep, found it. It was issue number 3323354. Review all pop-up messages shown by Svelte UI installer for user friendliness.
Right.
Yeah, we've avoided it completely. Stage.
Okay, so let's get to the current issue. Have you looked at it? Have you figured out where these messages show up?
It's not really about messages. It's more about the naming. They are asking themselves how to name it. It's not any specific to any error message yet. It's Package Manager currently uses the word stage to mean several things, and the question is, yeah, it's a name finding issue basically, not any specific place it's applied to.
Okay.
But it's filed as critical, so. And they try to get it into 11.2. And yeah, the problems here, a staging environment as in Composer Stager, Federico Maxima mentioned changing this to sandbox as a verb, for example, to stage, the stage sandbox environment, and as a synonym for phase or step or the object which manages the life cycle of a staging directory.
Is that what is in staging environment? Is it going to be kind of sandbox is something that kind of to me it's something like the way you do stuff you are not going to use, and staging is something that where you put things that you are going to use. So it's kind of to me it has a different meaning, those two.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think referring to the point 2 with stage and sandbox, I think it refers to the approach Package Manager takes, setting up a air quote sandbox or a stage for the to be installed site with the changes applied.
Yeah.
And if all tests pass, then the current site gets wiped or replaced by that stage or sandbox, if I understood it correctly.
So then it should be staging.
Yeah.
So you can't use sandbox for that. But I think phase and step, though, like you can use either of those. So I think we could kind of replace that kind of a like a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Those we could use replace with phase, I think. And that kind of depends on if you can go back and forth between, then you can use step. But if it's something that you go only forward, then it would be, I think, phase. Talking about that number 3 as a synonym of phase or step.
Question is if in on the point 3, if a user has even a touch point with that concept of a phase or step or whatever it is, or if it's simply under the hood, the steps or phases package manager runs through. But I think the more important question would be simply because in part here, the context that term is used is under the hood in the code, but it would be a reasonable question to ask, what are the front-facing occasions the term is surfaced to the user, or if it is surfacing at all?
So the reason it's marked as a beta blocker and a release priority is that it's used in class names. And currently the package manager I'm pretty sure is marked as experimental. So or in other words, the package manager itself is beta
Yeah.
stability. So or maybe it's alpha stability. So anyway, this is the time to make decisions about class names and whether it shows up in error messages or exception messages or anything is something that can be changed later. But right now the question is, and it's sort of an urgent question if we want to get it in by 11.2, is whether to rename some of the classes.
Yep.
If you browse the code base, I put a link into the chat. Um, you can see a few of the places where it's listed. And then if you open up validator, exception, and event, there are some other places. I wish there were an easy way to get a tree view and have No, if you open up the validator directory,
Oh,
um, there are a couple of classes with stage in the name. So under validator, there's stage not inactive validator and staged DB update validator. Um, and I think given the time we have, um, I I can only guess at what the various different word different uses of stage or staged mean. If you search the page for stage, or
um,
scroll down to the bottom.
in here?
No, no, no. Just look up 3 or 4. These are the classes that have stage in their name. No, go back to the previous page listing that directory and just look 3 or 4 up from the bottom of the list.
Oh, or maybe I should stop sharing and you share because I'm
Okay,
currently puzzled and not exactly understanding what you refer to.
I guess give me 1 minute to find the right tab. This looks like it. Um, okay, so here we have the package manager source directory, and I was saying to open up validator
Yeah, there we
and
go.
scroll to the bottom. There are these 2 classes.
Uh, uh,
I'm sorry, these 2 classes that have stage in their name.
oh, no. Now I understand. Okay.
And if we were to go back up a directory under event, there are there is one class there with stage in its name. Um, so I think there's also logging stager and stage base. I'm not sure that I can provide any useful feedback on this issue um, without understanding how it's currently being used. Um, I guess what might be helpful would be just to throw out some ideas. So um, under the proposed resolution, it mentions sandbox phase step. Maybe Simo's comment on the distinction between a phase and a step would be helpful to add as a comment. The distinction between a sandbox and a staging area, which Simo also described, that might also be helpful to add. Um, and perhaps just commenting on the issue might, bring it to the attention of the people who know more about it than we do. So staging environment, perhaps changing it to sandbox or adding the word environment if it's relevant in the class name. Are there any other alternatives? a single word that suggests staging environment. Oh, and I see, Simo, you've added something in the chat I didn't notice. Staging or preparation environment to stage, or put something to be deployed in the staging environment. Staged, I think there's a typo there. I think you meant staged, something that is deployed to staging environment. And stage is to step of phase. Step is able to move back, phase if one direction. Yes. Um, so I think adding some comments like these might be helpful. Ralph, can you remind me how this came up? Is this something you noticed? Is this something that was brought up in the Slack channel?
Something I've noticed in the automatic updates channel,
Okay.
and it hasn't not necessarily requested a UX review, but I just thought, um, since it is about terminology, it might be at least reasonable to take a brief look. Not necessarily that we can provide input, but it sounded pressing, and if a different perspective takes a look on it, might be useful, I thought, so I've picked it up. But one thing in regards of the terminology, it might be if stage is kept as a term or as a noun, then maybe another way to tackle ambiguity might be for the action, the verb, to avoid stage or to stage, and instead use staged or staging or go with something else there. But stage itself is a known term in the context of composer and backend, I suppose.
Stage is a known term in the context of composer.
A noun, a known, a noun.
A noun.
No,
Oh,
I've
I'm
I've added into the chat.
known.
Known.
Yes, known. Um, I guess I don't think of it in terms of a composer context. I think of it in terms of Git.
Oh, Git. Okay, yeah, that's right.
You stage your changes in Git and then you commit them. Um, so I'm guessing that we could go a long way on this issue just using this third point. Anywhere that stage is used as a synonym or phase or step, um, to choose either phase or step, as Simo suggested, the distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Um, and that might help decide how to rename some classes. And I guess I'd have to understand exactly what a stage event is. Is that an event that happens on the staging environment.
Probably.
And and if it's something that manages the life cycle of a staging directory, then perhaps something like stage step would be appropriate, although it's sort of an odd combination. Um, but sort of make step the noun and stage the adjective. Where is that step taking place, or where is that phase taking place?
Stage base class creates and manages a stage directory in which to install or update code.
Where are you reading that?
From Drupal API. I'm adding a link here.
Thank you.
So the link is for files that use stage event.
But a naive question.
Say again?
Would a naive question would be would you consider a stage event the same as a stage step? Because for me, it sounds like a step is basically a set of events or actions that take place during that step, while an event is a one-time thing for me.
But these are like events that are triggered from the staging environment. So this here, I read this as it's using stage as what I understand, what I would call staging or staging environment. So,
Right. So if we have the staging directory, and there are several steps or phases, we create the directory, we run Composer in that directory. Um, there must be further things that go on after that. Each of those could be an event, and various other parts of the code might want to react to those events. So those could be stage events or staging events or stage directory events. So stage base. Simo is copying something to the chat. Creates and manages a stage directory in which to install or update code. So I guess one possible change would be to change this either to staging directory base or simply staging base. And I think that's following the suggestion one of you made earlier that we should avoid using stage as a noun in the context of the staging directory, right?
Yeah, I
Mm,
think it makes sense to me because that's what I'm used to.
yep.
So let me just use this text area as a draft. So one, use staging or staged in the context of the staging directory. And maybe it should be explicit, not stage. So example, staging base or staging directory base instead of stage base. To use phase or step instead of stage. And let's see, is there something I can copy from the chat here about the distinction between the two? Simo. And this is repeating what I've already entered. Step is able to move back, phase of one direction. Um, so those are some relatively concrete suggestions. Um,
I suppose in the context of package manager, it's probably a phase the more appropriate term given your distinction here.
Probably.
Yeah.
And Simo is the one who suggested that distinction. I'm just copying.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure who of you posted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree definitely.
Um, shall we leave it there? It's 5 minutes left in the hour. Um, Anything else you'd like to bring up before we quit? Before we end the meeting?
Nothing from my end. Looks good.
Okay, well, I will start with this and add something to make it a proper comment for this issue. And uh, would one of you like to add a comment here? Okay, I think I can handle that one too if you prefer.
So, or yeah, but you don't have to do both. I can do the other.
Okay,
We end up with a recommendation that just leave the text change away, and otherwise it's fine
yes, or
with the other issue coming up.
Yeah, remove basically the description so that the description is unchanged to the current state. And second, the other RGPC issue, that it's a good thing that it's not
yeah.
ticked anymore.
All right. So here's the screenshot. So just remove that second sentence, which is being added by this issue.
Yeah, and what was our reasoning behind removing it again?
Um, that it's mixing up the responsibilities of the edit, manage fields, and manage display tabs. That that someone editing a content type should already know that the manage form display is the right place to look for that.
Yeah. And also the point you've said about on the managed fields, add a help text and a follow-up issue, maybe. That it would be the more appropriate place.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a more appropriate place to give information about the default values, not the visibility on the edit form. So it would be a separate issue.
Yeah.
Okay. It's almost the end of the hour. 1 minute shy. So thanks for this discussion,
Thank you.
and I'll be back next week. Hope you can make it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have a nice weekend.
Have a nice
Thank you.
weekend.
Bye.